This podcast is a member of WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
I'm Chuck Norris, and I approve this game.
Between the time when gamers played with miniatures and chainmail and the rise of the Wizards of the Coast, there was an age of advanced role-playing undreamed of. And onto the Skygax, destined to bear the jeweled crown of TSR upon a troubled brow, it was given to teach us all how to roll for initiative.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
This is the Roll for Initiative podcast, volume number 3, issue 153. Letters to the editor, number 5 this week. DM Vince sitting with DM Nick.
Hi, folks.
And the infamous DM Chad.
And you can't say infamous without famous. Hey there, how you doing?
Good. So, Chad, what's been going on with the Dead Game Society podcast?
Well, we've actually put 2 new episodes out. We did an episode where we review the classic game Boot Hill, and we also have an interview out with Jeff Grubb, who created a lot of games, some of which, Spelljammer, Al-Qadim, just a ton, Marvel superheroes. Great interview, great guy.
Yeah, we did
Love
speak to him a
Marvel superheroes.
long time ago when we did the Manual of the Planes.
Manual of the
review.
Planes, yes.
Yes, we did. That was a while ago.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. Very prolific game designer.
Yes.
Isn't he in the middle of, I forget the name of the game online he was creating. Oh, I just had it at the tip of my tongue. I know he was involved in some online multiplayer game.
He was involved in Guild Wars.
That's it, Guild Wars 2 was. That's what it was.
He was involved
Yes,
in the
indeed.
design in that?
No, the story design, not the actual video game design.
Oh, still very cool.
Oh, yeah, he was,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he's still working on that. I'm not sure if he is, but the last time I looked, he was, so. But I think that was cool, because I used to play Guild Wars a lot. It was a really cool free game.
Yeah.
Anyway, Nick, what have you been up to? We haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, just life. What can I say? But had another game session with my Castle Greyhawk campaign, going along really well. Everybody's enjoying it. So I'll keep it going as long as everybody's having fun. But I have some alternatives to, maybe in a year or so down the road, if everybody's getting bored, if they want to try something new, I got some ideas. But I know by the time the show comes out, it'll be probably right around October. And our October game, everybody decided we're going to play Call of Cthulhu, and I'm going to run it. I'm like, okay.
Nice.
So,
Nice. That'll be fun.
I got a scenario picked out. I'm not sure if we're actually going to play on the 31st. The 31st is a Friday. It would work out great. But I got to check with everybody. Sometime in the next few weeks, we are going to do a Call of Cthulhu one-off. And I got the perfect scenario. It'll definitely be just for, perfect for a one-night game. So I'm looking forward to that. So something different.
When you play the game, are you going to set the mood, like put some music on in the background, do some candlelight?
I don't know, set in the mood, candlelight. Wait, I'm trying to romance my wife or scares people. I don't know. It depends.
You could sacrifice somebody.
Well,
Maybe invoke Cthulhu.
That definitely the wife would not be around for that.
Aw.
But not her sort of cup of tea.
Nope.
But
I tried doing that.
Sometimes I'll like before the game starts, I'll probably have my laptop there with a couple of speakers, maybe start playing some music, kind of get the mood going. And there's a lot of good free stuff out there on YouTube that I found, and that's for any game I'll do, either like for my Greyhawk campaign or something. And when the game starts, I'll stop that stuff, but just kind of somewhere in the background while everybody's getting ready. But I think we mentioned we had a show long time ago, way back when, that we talked about doing props for games, and Call of Cthulhu is one of those games where having props or I'll like handouts really lends to it. In fact, I'm almost certain that Call of Cthulhu is the first role-playing game where it had handouts of that nature that were rather prolific for the game. So, I'm going to have some really cool.
A great one for that. I love
it
props
is.
in Call of Cthulhu. I did a Titanic adventure and actually handed out players the actual menus that were used on the Titanic. Cool. Yeah, they had boarding passes and everything.
It adds a little bit of immersion, to get people into, if not into the characters, but also into the environment that they're in. It gives them a sense of being there, at least a little bit. So I'm really looking forward to that. So what about you, Vince? What have you been up to?
Well, I haven't played in a couple of weeks because now the summer is finally almost over here, and most people went back because where I live is a college town, so most of the people went back to college or they went back home, so there's been no real playing here. The only thing that's available is a Pathfinder game, and I sat in one or two games, and I was just like, meh. I mean, I like Pathfinder, but it's not my game, so it's just something to be social and play, so. Mm-hmm. And there was a 5th edition game going on, and I just kind of looked at it and just watched it and observed it, and it just, I don't know. I haven't made my decision yet. I haven't read the rest of the books, so.
Yeah.
So,
you did mention that when we did our little review of 5th edition, there were some people that were a little bit, how do I put it? I don't know. I guess unhappy.
Yeah.
Would be it. Yeah, but, I thought we gave it a fair shake. I didn't think we were, really lambasting the thing.
No, but we did compare it to 1st edition, which a lot of people were like, well, it never should be compared to. But that's the whole point of this show, is compare and contrast. So, and there were a few points that we were laughing at certain things maybe we shouldn't have, but oh well. But one thing we didn't hear...
It is what it is.
We didn't hear Chad's opinion on 5th edition, really, because he was not available that day.
That's true.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I can't really give an educated opinion on 5th edition because I haven't read it yet. I haven't had a chance to play it, and I haven't read it, so I can't really give you my opinion on it. Mm-hmm. It might be a great game. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with the games that I'm playing right now, so... maybe the urge will hit me to try out something different, at which case that may become a candidate, at which point, I'd want to sit down and read it and figure out what it's all about. And obviously, if I'm playing 5th edition, or if I'm going to play 5th edition, it's not, I'm going to play it because I want to do something a little different than 1st edition. Otherwise, I just keep playing 1st edition.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I guess
I just think people don't understand that, you can't help just comparing it to something that, what you know. Well, I think that's just kind of a given.
Well, now the 5th edition's out, we'll keep you updated what we think about it. I'm sure that Dead Game Society is looking at 4th edition to add to their repertoire right now.
Not currently. Maybe eventually, but right now, there's just so many great games out there that are out of print. We just have a ton of games right now on our list of games to talk about. So I know we are going to be talking about Traveler in the next month.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yeah, it should be. I've actually been talking to some people who are, I think everybody could agree, are fairly knowledgeable on the system. And we're also talking about doing Gamma World pretty soon. We've had a lot of interest in it. Exactly. So yeah, we got a few games on the horizon, a few out of print games.
Cool.
Very excited for it.
Cool. If you want to reach
Traveler was one of those games. I remember when it first came out, when it said, "Man, this game is brutal because your character can die in creation." I'm like, "What? Never heard of that before." So
yeah, Traveler is just it's a really cool game, and it's one of those games that it has its own cult following, and that's always a good indicator for a game, because that means that that it's interesting enough that it's kind of created its own cult personality, I guess you'd say. And so Yeah, I love games where, and I love games that have a very involved character creation system because that's at the end of which you're really kind of invested in your character, and it's not a character you can just write off at the drop of a hat. I've played in games before with people who are not so much into the role play aspect. Hey, what's the name of your character? I don't know. That's not important. What? So, to each his own. That's not my cup of tea, but I think Traveler is not one of those games, and there's great games out there that don't require a lot of like Marvel superheroes is wonderful, and it doesn't have this super huge character creation, but it's still fun.
Yeah, Traveler always, maybe, I've always remembered, it was like, quote unquote, the D&D of science fiction role playing. It had that kind of air about it for the longest time. And I've always pictured that, Traveler as a game that is it's really gritty in its look on science fiction, It wasn't a, I guess they actually tried to interject more science into the game than like, a game like Star Frontier.
Star Trek. Yeah.
Or Star Trek, yeah.
And it's interesting.
It tended to be a little more low tech on the science fiction scale, I guess.
Yeah. When I was I was at Nexus Game Fair actually, and I had the opportunity to have some drinks with Zeb Cook, and we talked a little bit about he did a little bit of comparing and contrasting Star Frontiers from Traveler. That was really interesting. But, it is different. I like a grittier sci-fi game, I think. It's like comparing Alien to Star Trek. Star Trek's not that gritty. Star Trek's more idealistic.
Yes.
There's a lot to be said for that, too.
Yeah, it depends on what you like. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. Heck, I played my fair Star Trek as well.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed.
Cool. RFIstaff@gmail.com is our email address. RFIpodcast.com is our website. 570-865-4210 is the hotline. Or you can go to Facebook.com/RFI podcast. You can go to G+, find our community page there. We're everywhere where you want to be.
And nowhere at the same time.
Absolutely. Hey, Nick. Guess what?
Yes. What?
September is over almost now, right?
Yeah, we're counting it down the last few days.
And September marks 5 years of this podcast.
You
wow.
Get out of town. No way. 5 years?
5 years.
I've been with it almost the whole 5 years. I think almost.
Yeah, you came on about episode 6, I think it was.
Maybe a little bit later than that.
I think it was around there. 6 or 7, maybe around there.
Yeah.
9, I don't know.
It was like at the end of 2009 I came on.
Oh, man. Can't even imagine a Roll for Initiative without DM Nick.
Yeah, it's wow, what a strange trip it's been.
Or DM Christopher Walken.
No, jeez.
No, I won't get started on that. Though I've had a suggestion. On maybe on a segment.
Oh.
And Christopher Walken would be in the segment. You'd show up.
What was the segment?
Maybe be the Dungeon Master.
Ask Christopher Walken.
Well, maybe other notable figures would show up as well, along with Mr. Walken.
Like Homer Simpson?
Yeah. Maybe I might show up there, and I'll play an elf, but I always die.
I see Homer more as a dwarf. I don't know.
Yeah, truly. Or just the dumb fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Just give me a sword and cut his head off.
Yeah, we have to knock on Blackstone's door because he's been getting a paycheck but hasn't produced anything in a while.
Wow, he must work for the government.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's head into the meat of our show, and we'll be right back.
Your attention, please.
Dear adventures fall flat. Encounters provoke yawns, monsters need bite, magic items misfire. Well, here at the WGP Think Tank, our experts are here to provide excitement, snap, and dynamic energy to game masters who are tired, burnt out, or just plain stuck. And we do it in about 30 minutes or less.
Your mind will expand.
Come in. You've just entered the Brainstorm.
The Brainstorm Podcast, twice a week, 30 minutes per episode or less. BrainstormPodcast.info for more information. Thanks.
Master! They're at the gates again! Master! It looks like another band of adventurers!
Adventurers again? Always the same. Coming to me for sage advice.
We'll jump right into voicemails and emails for our letters to the editor this week.
Let's open up the mailbag here.
Oh, we got our voicemails first.
Oh.
So,
all right, I'll put the mail down.
Yeah, put the mail down for 1 second, Nick. Yeah, I know you're excited, but... So, first one, here we go. Well, if I click the button right, here we go.
Push the button, Frank.
Hi, this message is for the Roll for Initiative podcast. This is DM Steve in Texas. I just wanted to say I listened to Vince and Nick's debrief on the 5th edition game, and the only thing that makes me vomit more than listening to DM Crispy is thinking about all the ways that Wizards screwed up the new edition. So that's it for me. Short one this time. Bye, guys.
Yeah, that was one of our loyal listeners who did not like our 5th edition review. Well, didn't like the fact that we reviewed 5th edition at all.
Well, I thought he was going to say something like, listen to Nick's voice or the Vince voice. I'm like,
Nah.
Yeah, I thought that was going to go a whole different direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
He's the one guy that always calls in or writes in and says that Crispy makes him vomit every time he hears his voice. So.
Well.
So Crispy has a hater out there.
I want to see a doctor about that.
This episode is 100% Crispy free. So it's original recipe.
It's not extra crispy?
No extra crispy.
All right, so our next voicemail comes in from, guess who?
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken?
Close, DM Kojo. I'm betting DM Kojo.
You're right, DM Kojo.
Oh my god, yay! What do I win?
You win 3 platinum.
But I like Electrum pieces.
Fine, you can have 1 Electrum.
I'll take platinum too. That's okay.
All right, here we go.
You're not
Hey, our buyers. This is DM Kojo. Just wanted to call in with a few thoughts about the review you guys did of 5th edition D&D. I have the starter set, but granted I have not gone through it much. Same with the free PDF. So your breakdown of it was very informative and helpful to me to hear the different things that are in each chapter and whatnot. I think you guys did a great job with that. I guess the part that was a little frustrating is that I felt like you were always comparing it to first edition, and I don't think it was ever intended to be first edition or anything like first edition. When you talk about the overpoweredness of the magic system or the other things like healing and the XP chart, how XP works. It sounds like more like you were frustrated that it wasn't like first edition. And my curious point, I guess, is how does it compare within the bounds of 5e itself? Meaning, is the spell system overpowered relative to the monsters and their abilities? Or is it still fairly balanced so that there is still a threat of players being killed? Maybe maybe it's power creep on both sides of the screen, and therefore it's more balanced. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. that when you review a game, I think it's important to look at it within itself, not necessarily comparing it to other editions, because of course it's never going to live up to the edition that we grew up with and loved and still play. So I don't think 5e is going to be my edition either. I would definitely give it a try. A read-through is good, but I think trying it is the ultimate test. So I'll definitely do that at some point. But so overall, a good review. A little overly sarcastic, perhaps, but you guys gave it a fairer shake than I thought you would initially. So I appreciate that. Keep up the great work, guys. Talk to you later.
Okay, thank you, DM Kojo. Anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I do have a few.
Okay. Go ahead. Go.
All right, so yeah, I do have a few comments from what DM Kojo said. I appreciate the feedback there. From what I understand, though, when they were creating this new edition of D&D, they wanted it to be as, from what I understand, you could tailor it to whatever way you want, and that was also including people who played first edition.
Or basic, or anything else.
Or basic or something like that. So, taking that into consideration, from what I've always read on when this was being play tested and rewritten through all that time, that was one of the things they were trying to go back to that thing. Now, from what I've read, it doesn't seem like that at all. So, if anything, they've taken steps in a whole other direction. But that's how I interpret it. I might give it I might play it sometime, just to try it out, maybe at a convention. But I don't think it's going to be my game of choice at home for my gaming group. So yeah, that was one of the things that they were so touting when they were first designing it. So, you can make it just like first edition or something, to that effect. You know what I mean? That was what I kind of got out, because they were getting they wanted a lot of feedback from the community, and they wanted to try to get all the people who were older gamers back into the fold. So, I don't know. That's kind of my take on it.
What I would say is, I think it you have to have a common frame of reference. So you can't just start. I understand what he's saying, but you kind of have to have something you could compare it to, because you're talking about it to a group of people who, primarily you're addressing it to people who might be interested in playing it. Well, to do that accurately, you have to create a common frame of reference. And, this is a first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons podcast. So most of the listeners are going to be familiar with first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which means that makes the best common ground from which you can then talk about another game. I don't think you can escape comparisons in that regard. And also, now, and as I said earlier, I need to. This is totally my, what I've heard. So I could be wrong, but I believe that when it was first being touted, for people to play, weren't they saying that this was the edition that really kind of went back to first edition AD&D? Yeah. I might be wrong on that, but if it is...
No, you're absolutely right. That was one of the things they touted. Exactly.
Right. Well, then it's totally suitable to compare it to first edition AD&D.
Yeah, and by them saying that, by Wizards saying that, they set it up to where, in a way, you're going to compare it to earlier editions, whichever ones you like. So
exactly,
it's going to naturally, it's going to fall into that, unfortunately, for some people.
So that being uneducated on the game myself, I can only address the question of why would you compare it to first edition AD&D, and that would be my reasoning. I think that you have to have your common frame of reference that everybody can agree with, everybody's familiar with. And then, you have to address the fact that that's how I always heard it advertised. People would always come up to me and say, well, wow, they're really getting back to first edition AD&D. Okay, well, in that case, you can't escape it. Then you have to compare it to first edition AD&D.
That's right.
I don't think that's what it was really. I don't think they're comparing it. I think the whole purpose was to mimic the old style rules of having to be able to, if you don't like something, you can pull it out and it won't break the game, is the whole concept.
Right. But
weren't they mentioning first edition AD&D and how they were, how that could be done? That's literally what people told me. Maybe those people were wrong, and if so, I'm sorry. I can only go off of what people told me until I read the book, but that's how it was explained to me. And I was at a convention last year, which they start to sometimes run the events start to run together, but I do remember somebody was telling me, they're really getting back to the same feeling that they had in first edition AD&D. Well, great. Then I have to obviously compare it to first edition AD&D if I'm going to review it.
Right. Yeah, that's how I understood it as well, Chad. I mean, yeah, I don't believe you're wrong in that. And I think what Vince is saying is they're going back to, as far as like how to say it was being a more or less a modular game. You can add or remove things, and then, like you said, the whole system won't break down. Like earlier edition, another edition. I'm talking to you, third edition, and well, maybe that is. I don't know, but that's why I said, maybe I'm going to have to give it a play to actually give it a fair shake. But going through the rules in themselves as presented when we did that review, I didn't see anything there that, I was reading through it, I thought to myself, oh yeah, this is like this in a previous edition, or this is similar to that. I really didn't get much of that at all. If anything, I thought it was more computer gaming. So.
Yeah, well, and also, if you're going to review something, it goes back to the common frame of reference. But whenever you review something, usually you have something else that you review it against, so you have context. And I guess you could have reviewed it in contrast or comparison to Middle Earth Roleplay, but it's called advanced. It's called Dungeons and Dragons, so it makes the most sense to compare it to one of the editions of Dungeons and Dragons. And since this is a first edition AD&D show, it makes most sense to compare it against first edition AD&D.
Yep, absolutely correct. I'm with you on that.
So yeah,
what do you think, Vince?
I don't know.
Besides saying yeah.
Yeah, so there.
Are you just done with the whole subject and just move on?
I'm pretty much done with the whole subject. I gave my opinion of what I thought of the initial review. I've been watching the game, haven't had a chance to actually play it. I do have the book itself. One of my friends did purchase it for me and give it to me because he said, damn you, you're going to read this book. So I do have the player's handbook.
They're going to drag you kicking and screaming into reading the book, huh?
Because I was just like, I don't know. And he's like, well, here's the book. You can read it. And I'm like, okay, cool. He gave it to me, so I'll read it. I've been reading it. It's interesting. I mean, it reminds me a lot of third edition itself, but whatever. We'll find out. I've watched a lot of games and answered Kojo's question about is the spell power and the characters overpowered compared to the monsters from what I've seen. No, sometimes the monsters seem like they overwhelm the characters, but it all depends on the DM style, I think, because the DM that I saw playing was hitting the party way too hard with monsters, so. And that's why a lot of them died, but I think if you have maybe light to medium combat, you should be fine, but if it's combat, combat heavy, yeah, they're going to die very easy. But any edition is like that.
Oh yeah,
really, how combat heavy a game is, that comes down to the GM running the game.
Yeah.
I've ran Top
That's
Secret
true.
where
That's
you
absolutely
only rolled
true.
the dice one time and everybody had a great time, but you don't have to run
Mm-hmm.
it that way.
Yeah,
No, of course not.
definitely. All right, let's get to our next voicemail.
Okay.
Hey, RFI guys. This is DM Raceland Rocks. I was just listening to podcast, the letters to the editor, and the one that the guy asked about the true neutral alignment. I don't know if any of you played or looked at the second edition Complete Druid's Handbook. It actually had a really good explanation of how true neutral would work for a druid. For example, if they were guarding a certain area of land, then if it was threatened under any circumstance, then it wouldn't matter who it was, but they would take vengeance upon whoever it was that threatened it, be it a horde of orcs or a family that moved in and started defacing the forest and removing trees that they weren't granted permission to, or if a paladin, lawful good, rolled through and started, cutting down trees that may be sacred to the druid. If any of those three were to happen, the druid would then bring his wrath upon them, because that's the way his true neutralness works. His neutralness was for, his set of ideals, and it didn't matter who it was, he would fight them to uphold his standards and virtues to protect nature. So I just thought that was interesting. If you guys have a chance to take a look at that, I recommend it, because it goes through a pretty good explanation of how true neutral works for a druid. That was just one of the little examples they have. So keep it going, keep it old school, and thanks a lot. Bye.
Never got into the Splat books. That's when I felt that it was all bloat in second edition, when TSR just went, hey, let's produce the book on how to take a dump. Boom. So.
Yeah. I never got into the complete, or I think they were called like the
complete
what
book
was it? The
of
complete druid, or
yeah, basically we're just complete book of and whatever insert here.
right. I never got into it. Never needed it.
The only ones I ever got were for the 4 core classes and the humanoids ones, but I never got the druids one. I never picked that one up.
Yeah, but with that said, I agree with what he's. I haven't read it, but as he stated it, yeah, I'd agree that would be a good example of a druid's outlook on true neutral. If they're not for either side, because to quote Treebeard from the Lord of the Rings, I'm not exactly on anybody's side because no one's exactly on my side. Right. They're there for the forest. They're there for what they are caretakers of, and so long as that's safe, they don't take sides.
Well, I also, along with there people having a beef with the paladin, which I still don't understand to this very day.
What's the?
I mean, another one is as far as people not playing paladins right. I also seen people not play druids right. So.
Oh yeah, I've seen lots of people not play druids.
I don't know where the stereotype of the paladin being just lawful stupid and kill first and ask questions later came from. Nor do I understand where the stereotype of the druid being some tree hugging hippie came from.
Woo! Peace and love.
I don't understand where that came from.
Well, the idea being that
because you know what,
they're the caretakers of the forest.
Well, yeah, but they are. That's not how they should be portrayed. That's not true in the least. If you're going to go by yes, they are caretakers of forest and nature, but it's about the balance of nature. And they don't want to see that balance of knocked off kilter.
Mm-hmm.
And hence that's why a druid is neutral. They want to maintain the balance. And like you said, they won't take sides necessarily, but they will, if they see the balance, will go off to one side if we're talking about alignments too much. There's a really good book I have about, kind of has this in context. It's a novel called Villains by Necessity by Eve Forward. One of my favorite fantasy books. And, it's about a group of characters that are, with all intents and purposes, they're evil. One's an assassin, one's a thief, one's basically a dark knight, an anti-paladin. But one of them that joins this troop is a druid, because there is too much goodness and light in the world. She wants to go back and maintain the balance. So that's how I think druids now should be played. But as far as if there's too much out of balance, they'll take a side, and it might be the evil side. If there's too much good and light in the world, it throws it off kilter. So they might go on the evil side.
Yeah, it sounds like a more kind of Zen outlook, I guess you'd say. The yin and the yang, they're trying to maintain that. I could see something like that.
The balance.
Yeah, I guess in my game, I like to portray them more as they're neutral in the fact that their first priority is to an aspect of the world that nobody else is really interested in, or both good and evil could destroy the forest for their own reasons, but the druid is seen as neutral because he never, because he might take, as the caller said, he might take vengeance on innocent or apparently innocent homesteaders.
Well,
because they're not valuing the same values.
Yeah, but I have a little bit of a contention with that, because if there was someone who, say, for example, if there was a village not too far away, and they needed more farmland because the village is growing and they need more food, and there's villagers.
But I see the druid would say, "This is a sacred forest. This grove is sacred," and that's actually, to say a sacred grove would be very historically correct as far as from a Celtic or from a Nordic view.
Oh no, I agree. But when
they would say, "Sorry, you need more land," my suggestion is to move someplace else because the trees need to live too. They're, if nobody else is listening.
I don't necessarily think a druid would be like that.
In your game, they may not be.
I think it all depends on the situation. I think the druid would maybe approach, or hopefully the villagers would approach the druid, or vice versa, and they would see how they can. Maybe the druid say, "Okay, maybe this area here you can have because it is overgrown and it is untended, yes, but this you can have this portion here, as long as you don't."
Yeah, I look at it more like the druid would feel like he didn't have the authority to do that, because it's more like, how the Native American Indians looked at land. They were just like, well, you can't own land. I
don't know if I approach.
That's how I see it. They would go to the druid and say, "Hey, you got this whole nice stretch of land. We'd like to, we're in desperate need of growing more crops." And the druid would say, "Yeah, well, what's already there is in desperate need of continuing to live also. So, I'm not I don't have the authority to give you the right to take over this area of the sacred grove. I'm simply a caretaker. My job is to protect it."
The whole forest isn't the sacred. The whole forest isn't going to be
right.
The sacred
But
grove,
what if in your game that druid sees all the the damage that has been done to the wilds? Maybe the forest has continued to shrink as humans continue to reduce it for whatever material gain.
And that's where I talk about the balance thing.
Right. And but I look at it this way. I just say that the druid would see himself as not having the authority to say that the druid feels like he has been vested with this role as a caretaker of this particular forest. And, you know, if he gets if the forest or the god of nature who he venerates or whatever, you know, tells him in a dream, yes, do this, it's for the greater good, or it's for what we feel is the greater good, then yeah, he would probably do it. But otherwise, I don't think he would feel that he himself would have that authority. I mean, he's given a role, he knows it, you know. That's his duty, that's his calling.
You said duty.
Duty.
Nick.
I don't know. I see that the druid, he or she is, well, yeah, is a caretaker of nature, but they also try to maintain the balance in nature. And there are going to be certain circumstances where his belief in the balance is going to be called into question. And if it goes too far out of balance, I think he would choose a side.
Well, perhaps. I think on this one, we'll just have to agree to disagree.
Okay.
Agree to disagree.
Okay.
All right.
Said duty.
Anyway, let's go to our last final voicemail here.
RFI folks, this is DM Kojo. Got a question for you about conventions and kids. My 8-year-old son Chase asked me tonight when he gets to go to GaryCon with me. I think 8's a little bit young for me to bring him. But I told him I wasn't sure. I'd think about it. I'm leaning towards 12 or 13. So I'm just curious, though you have kids, what age did you decide to take them to their first convention? And if you don't have kids, I'm curious about any experiences you have at conventions with kids at the table. Do you feel that it restrains you from having as much fun because you can't be yourself or drop the profanities or anything like that? Or do you find that seeing that helps your game? Thanks. Bye.
All right. Well, I'll do mine first since I have no kids. And I think kids at the table hinder role playing depending on how old they are. I mean, yeah, they could be great role players, but I feel as an adult sitting with a kid, you shouldn't be sitting there just letting them loose on everything because they're a kid. There's some things kids shouldn't hear. And I played in a couple convention games where there were kids and they were just utterly annoying little kids. They were just sitting there running around in circles, didn't really care until it was time to roll the dice. So, no. And in my groups, I don't allow kids at all. Have to be 18 plus. That's just my opinion. Nick, you have kids. What do you do?
I'll slightly disagree there.
Okay, that's fine.
Certain acts. I would say, just reflecting from my own experiences and being a parent, and having one of my kids interested in role playing, I found that if you're gonna if we're gonna just talk about conventions themselves,
that's fine because that's the only time I really played with them myself. So
right, I think as a parent, you know your kid, you know your child the best, and I think my first convention experience for me, I think I was like 12, maybe 13, you know? That was my first, and I think that's a good time to have your kids, if they're going to go to a convention with you, is probably the best time to do it. Younger, I would have to agree with Vince, though, if there's a maturity level for the child as far as how, you know, because they're still learning how the world works and getting all those social interactions and how people react to each other. They're not that savvy with it yet. So And also, I have seen at conventions where the parents bring their kids who were way too young, and they let their kids pretty much do whatever, and it does take away from the experience, and that's a bad reflection on the parent, not the child necessarily. That's just poor parenting, and I've seen that for a long time.
Well, when I went to that one convention, when Mepicon, all the parents decided they were all going to bring kids except for me and another player, and obviously the DM. And it was fine at first; they were fine. Then it just became like the kids started getting off their parents' lap, running around, spinning in circles, going, "Is it time for me to roll dice yet?" Going to the screaming.
And these were probably little kids, like younger than 10 years old, I'm assuming.
Some of them were 10, some of them were 8, some of them were like 5 who shouldn't be there.
So they're like 10 or younger. Absolutely. And that's what I mean, that, when you're that age or younger, you're a kid. You got the attention span of, a tsetse fly. I mean, ooh, look, something shiny, and then you're off. That's one thing I found out when I ran my own group of the kids that were relatively young age. Their attention span's very short. So keeping their attention is really hard to do. So I would say the role-playing experience, you got to do it in little segments, maybe no more than a couple hours, and you got to take a break, then you get back to it. But I would say to Kojo, I would probably wait. Wait a few more years until at least they're maybe 11 or 12, because that's when my daughter Anna, when I had her first go, she was like she was 12 or 13 years old, and she was mature enough to understand and how to act and everything like that.
Still, I still say that a lot of people are affected by kids under 18 playing at the gaming table. I mean, you still, as an adult, still feel that you shouldn't say certain things, and maybe you shouldn't say them to begin with, but, you're there to relax and have a good time, so you shouldn't have to be hindered by political correctness or, making sure you don't say the F word because, hell, maybe that's what you want to say because that helps you relax. So, I'm not going to judge you for that. But
right. Oh,
maybe
I agree.
You want your character to do something.
That when that happens, like if it's at your local group, like your own home group, that's where you have to go approach the whole group and say, you know what, I would like to have my son or daughter come into this game. What does everybody feel about that? And this is what I think. But when it comes to like a convention, unfortunately, you don't have that. Communication going on. I mean, you go into a game, but you know what? Going even to some conventions, when you sign up for a game, they have the maturity level right there, generally for the event, for as far as age group. So at least I know at Origins they have it listed for all their events. The age group that it's acceptable to.
Wasn't Gen Con the same way?
I believe Gen Con is the
same way, and so is Gary Con, and Nexus was as well. Most conventions are. My view on it is this.
Yeah.
One, my daughter is 11. I still haven't taken her, mainly because she's not interested in it. I think the parents need to remember a couple of things. One, you really, as a parent, you have to look. Your child. Do they really enjoy this game and they're going to sit there and take it seriously? Or is this really more you trying to live through your child and mold them into what you want them to be? So, are you talking your child into this, in other words?
Right.
And if you are, don't do this, because they are, if you really want to introduce them to gaming, then there are almost always games out there at conventions that are catered to this very thing, to bringing in young children and introducing them to the game. Get them in one of those games. But remember that the other players who have signed up for this game, they paid money to be in this game. And if so don't just think about, well, I think this would be a great experience for little Tommy to do this. But that little Tommy has never, shown that much attention span when you played at home with your other friends, and he's not going to at the convention either.
Right.
Now, also, if you know that Tommy is more mature for his age, or her, little Elizabeth, and in the past when you have had them play, in your local friendly gaming store or at home with other friends of yours, they've always stayed at the table. They've always gotten really into it. They absolutely love the game, and they're not going to get bored with it during a convention game. Sure, that might be an exception to the rule. But if you know your child has a short attention span or is just not really into this game, then I think we can all agree what's going to happen after the first 15 minutes of play. And that's just not polite. That's not fair to the other players who have put money down to be at that game. So think of the other players. Now, as far as the reasoning that, you might want to not be as politically correct, generally speaking, even if it's all adults at your table is right next to two to three other tables, So if everybody's just, cursing up a storm, you're probably pretty much pissing off the people at the tables around you, as well as probably a few of the adult players at your table. This isn't your living room. This is a public convention, so you actually do have to keep that in mind too.
I wasn't talking about constant sailor cursing. Like if you accidentally go, "Oh shit," you have to say, "Whoops, there's a kid at the table. I just made that parent pissed off."
Right. Yeah, I understand that. I just look at it this way. When you go to a convention, you always follow convention etiquette, whether it's a child or another adult, because I know a lot of adults who just really don't care for it. And of course, obviously, I've let a word slip out now and then. I'm known to use colorful phrasing, but at the end of the day, my main advice would be this: look real hard at your child and figure out, can he do this? Is he at the maturity level that he will not be simply annoying the other players and not taking the game seriously? If so, do not bring him into the game with other people who have paid money to be at that table, because that's a very selfish thing to do, in my opinion. You really do need to think about the enjoyment of the other people who are at that table. And if your child starts really acting up during the game, maybe you misjudged the situation, then maybe you should withdraw from that game, because you're taking away from the enjoyment and the investment that the other people had put into that event. And not to mention the fact that the DM has probably put a lot of work into it, and he's constantly having to look over at the parent with that "please keep your child in check" look. That's not fun. So yeah, like for me, my daughter's not into it. That's cool. I wouldn't take her, because she wouldn't enjoy it, and nobody else would enjoy after a while being at the table with her. And also, well, that's about it. I just say, take a hard look at your child's maturity level. You know how mature they are. Don't look at it through, well, I think that he could be very attentive. No, look at it and say, is he or is he not? What is his track record? And, it doesn't hurt to reach out through, a lot of times conventions have forums. See if the person running the game you like is on the forums. I've had people send me instant messages before via the forums saying, I'd like to bring my daughter. Do you think that would be okay? And I'll come back and I'll usually say, well, do you think your daughter would really be into this? If so, and she's of a maturity level you think that could handle the plot that's going on, then okay. If I'm running a game I know is not suitable for children, I'll come back to that person and say, this is not really for kids. And I marked it that way when I put the game in. A lot of times GMs do not do not pay attention to that. They simply want lots of players, so they try to keep the requirements as open-ended as possible, and that's not right either. But yeah, generally speaking, know your child, know their limits, and if possible, reach out to the game master and ask if this is probably going to be a good idea or not.
Cool. I agree 100% with all your comments there.
Or if the kid's really getting annoying, just punch them so they knock them out, and then that's the end of them.
No.
Yeah, and hope you're a lot. Yeah, and hope you have a good lawyer.
Now, I always heard that Dramamine usually works really well with kids. Just kidding. Anyway, so we have some. We just have some emails to read now. Nick, let's start with you first for one of the emails.
Oh, okay. I guess I will go first here. Hold on a second. Let me scroll down. Scroll. Okay. It says, hi, RFI. Found your podcast a month ago. I've been listening to it a lot. I've driving around a job, so it helps me entertain. Guys are better than NPR. Well, thank God for that, right?
Yeah.
And sports talk radio. Live in Minnesota, you know.
Eh?
So he first, in a past episode, he applauded the creative use of the create water spell or its reverse being cast on a person to drown or dehydrate them. It actually forbids this in the player's guide description of the spell. It does? Okay. Fair enough. But he did have two other questions.
Okay.
First, is a half-elf always half human, or can it be half orc or half elf? I believe in the rules that the half-elves are always half-elf and half-human, as written in a player's handbook. But does not mean in your own campaign that they couldn't be half-elf or half-orc. So, at least in my opinion. What do you think, guys?
I think I'm going to agree with you, Nick, and just go with what the book normally says. But, yeah, it's your campaign, your rules. You can make a half-elf, whatever you want to have to be with the elf. So that's what I think. Chad?
Well, my opinion on this, again, it's if you're a by-the-book player, then, you already have your answer. But if you like to rationalize for your players why that is in the book, you might say something like, well, it's genetics. You can't have an elven dwarven child because, one, dwarves are naturally resistant to magic. Elves, generally speaking, are considered to be very magical in nature. So the pairing of the two would create sterility as far as children are concerned. Maybe we know that orcs and humans can mate because you have half orcs, but maybe orcs can't mate with elves because they don't have. Humans are supposed to be kind of a common denominator between most of the races, and that's why maybe they make you have so many half human variants.
Right.
But you don't have as many half elf variants because they don't have the gene that humans have, and the other creature doesn't have the gene that humans have that allow that interbreeding. That would be my answer. I don't allow it. No one's really ever asked me to be a halfling, but if they did, I'd probably consider it. But if I had to say no, that would be my reasoning.
I wonder.
Now, I've always thought that when you think about like half orcs and half elves, that was definitely borrowed from Tolkien.
Yeah.
When they put it in the game, and I've always thought that the half orcs were like D&D's interpretation of Uruk-hai, of the Uruk-hai.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're a mix of half
which is what I think.
orc and human blood.
Right, exactly. And, they actually, if you read Fellowship of the Ring, when they're in Bree, there's a kind of sinister-looking fella that's watching them in the bar, and he's actually referred to later as a half-orc or half-goblin.
Right. So, and in fact, wasn't it that the orcs were originally like, they were mutated forms of elves or something like that, or was it goblins? I don't know, but I know that that's how I always determined the half orcs and the half elves, and the half elves are also in Tolkien as well, and I thought that was an interpretation of it as well, because they're a mix of elven and human blood. But like I said, it's your game world. If you want to have half elves be half orc too, sure, why not?
Yeah, it's your game at the end of the day.
It's your game. Yep. So that was his first question. He also had a question on, can you help me, point me in the direction of some mass combat rules that are really simple yet effective and cool. I don't want anything over technical. I was thinking it would be nice if the player characters could participate in some slaughter and how the outcomes of their individual combat somehow influence the outcome of the battle at large, like a dice modifier to the large scale stuff. I'm out of my depth when it comes to mass combat, so I don't know where to start. So thanks for putting out a really great podcast, DM Trev. So,
well, how about the battle rules for AD&D? Were those I never used them. Were those difficult? Do you guys use
I
that?
used to have those. I don't know what the heck happened to them. Battle system?
Yeah, that's it.
Talking about battle system.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? They had one for first edition, one for second edition. I remember battle system. You can definitely look into that. I don't believe it was too difficult. I used to have a copy. And somewhere in all my years of traveling and moving, they just disappeared.
Oh, doesn't Castles and Crusade have a good engine siege system for that?
You know, I don't know if they do.
Yeah, I'm not
could
sure.
always
I
try
know
to-
that. Well, I was going to say I know Menser came out with his own battle system for
Yeah,
I believe
that's
it was
true.
the companion or the master set. We used that when we were at Nexus Game Fair. Colin knows it pretty well. He runs an event that actually has a mass combat battle in it, and it's a blast.
I'm pretty sure battle system, if you go to the dndclassics.com, I think battle system has been released. So you can get it as a PDF.
Let me check
I'm
right
looking
now.
there. I'm looking there right now. I thought I saw it there. And I'm flipping through. No, that is Manual of the Plains. I could be wrong in this. That's why I'm double checking, because I thought I might have saw it there.
I just did a
And-
quick search for battle system, and then nothing came up. A lot of other things came up, but nothing related to it. So it may not have been released just yet.
on PDF.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, I don't see it on PDF either. I thought it might have been. So
They do
I
have
was wrong.
a Forgotten Realms Horde campaign book that might have some strategies. in
Yeah,
there.
but that's actually different. That's just for the when you're doing like Mongol Horde type campaign. They don't have mass combat rules in there.
I wonder if the
So-
Splat books that like the Rome campaign or things like that might have some siege rules in there too. Or mass
I
combat,
don't
I
know.
should say.
I don't have any of those. So
Well, if you have the rules encyclopedia, you can, and I believe it was actually Expert Set that Frank Menser put together rules for mass combat. And obviously, if you could get that, or you could get the rules encyclopedia, should have all of that information if you
Here we
wanted to
go.
go that route.
I found DM. It's the Splat book from second edition called the Castle Guide, DMGR2 for short. It has a battle systems rule in there for sieges and quick resolution for massive military campaigns. So you might want to look into that.
you might be able to find the old chainmail rules too somewhere out there. I wonder if you can use those.
Sounds like somebody has a hawk in the background.
That would be my window being open.
Oh, okay. So anyway, there you go. Let me read one of the next emails while Nick is closing his window.
Okay, I got the hint. There.
The next email comes in from Kevin Long, and he just says, after listening to the Giant series, I was wondering why you did not bring up the city of Hamlet. I have heard that is a great place for evil characters.
No, I think he's thinking of Nolb.
Yeah,
I think he's thinking of Nolb too.
I was going to say, I don't remember Hamlet being a place for evil characters, but hey, you never know.
There are a few evil characters in Nulb. There's a, I would have to grab my module, Temple of Elemental Evil, but I do remember that in Nulb there's at least one section, I think it's the Outfitter store, where there's there's at least one assassin that is in Hamlet.
Yeah, I've always Nolb was the seedier of the two, I believe.
Nolb, definitely, yes. That is the Mos Eisley of the Hamlet series, Hive of Scum and Villainy. So,
and it was the Outfitters that had that assassin.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Was there more to that email?
He asked, one of the older shows when we talked about detecting lies with paladins and the ability to not detect one of the older shows wondering, would not deceit, truth, and detect lies be the same thing? I guess so.
It's a matter of semantics. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it is the same thing. He also goes on to, he actually has a question posed for DM Will, who's no longer with the show, but I could probably get a comment from him if I could find him. But he says, I was listening to the show in which you talked about your dislike for DCC. I can understand not every person is going to like every game. I love DCC. I don't know what it is about the game. Maybe it's different style or of the halfling or the death or the funnel. I personally dislike the funnel system in DCC. I think it's just boring to me. I don't want to play 6 different characters and then pick one that survives as my main character. But I like the game overall. Anyone have any thoughts about DCC?
Well, actually, I'm getting ready to... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I like Dungeon Crawl Classics, and I do think the funnel system is kind of unique and interesting. I could see how some people don't like it.
Meh.
You know, if they think that's too much, if it's just... They want to just get in and playing with their character, but I think it's interesting where you can see where the characters, where they're pretty much starting off as 0 level nobodies, you gotta see who survives.
Meh. Chad?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually getting ready to start. Dave the Moderate from the forums is getting ready.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're taking a little break from B1 in Search of the Unknown, and he's going to run a play-by-post of Dungeon Crawl Classics. So I will learn my opinion on that game, but I'm excited to give it a try.
The only other thing I dislike about DCC is the weird dice, but I know there was a conversion chart in the back, but...
Yeah, you don't have to use the different weird dice when they call for it.
I don't know what the purpose
I do
of
like
that
the
was.
magic system, though. I think the magic system is kind of unique because every time you do magic, there's a price to pay.
Oh, is there?
So, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
More and more a wizard uses magic, the chances of you become more corrupted by the eldritch forces of the universe increases. Like how I threw in the word eldritch?
Yeah, I like how you did
Yeah, a little bit of Lovecraftian woo-ha-ha right there.
There we go. Now we just got to fit non-Euclidean in.
Oh, I'll find a way.
Anyway, so thank you, Mr. Long. Another email comes in from Adam. Just listen to your last show, and I think Nick mentioned that in a tough spot in the dungeon, he would want to have lots of rope tricks available so he can heal up. I don't think I've ever played that spell. What did you have in mind, Nick? Can you give me some ideas of the way you used rope trick?
Well, rope trick is one of those spells when you're in a heavy-duty dungeon crawl and you're way low in the levels. That is a way for the party to rest up, heal up, maybe get some spells. You know, it's because...
So what's an example of how you've used it just so he understands a little bit better?
Well, see, for example, I'll give you a really good example.
Please.
like the campaign that we're having, Castle Greyhawk. Okay.
I keep saying Grayskull in my mind.
Castle Grayskull.
Yeah, I keep thinking that in my
Art
mind.
of the power.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Ray puke. But anyway, Castle Greyhawk. It's got like 13 levels, right? I mean, one time or another, you're going to be on a level where maybe you don't have, because for example, this Castle Greyhawk, you can't teleport. You can't just teleport out of there or just run right out. And it's going to take a long time to find the way out of there, unless you come up with some real creative way of doing it. So maybe you're stuck like around level 6 or 7. You can't get back to the surface. Well, one of the things you can do with Rope Trick is if you have, for maybe there's a section of the dungeon where it's your party has scoped it out. It appears to be like a dead end, maybe, or there's a dead end at the end of a passageway. So one of the things you could do at the end of the passageway is like cast Rope Trick on the ceiling, and you can go into this extra dimensional space, and you could at least camp out there for a little while. So your party can heal up a little bit. So that would be one of the ways I would use Rope Trick. So, I mean, that's
I love Rope Trick.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why they made it. So.
Yeah, I mean, primarily, I think it's one of those spells that if you really kind of, it's a very choice spell. It's often overlooked. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, it's one of the greatest of the first level spells, because it is the spell that allows you to have a safe place to camp for the night. If you need to camp for the night, and like you were saying, Nick, you're in very hostile territory. Say you're at a deeper level of a large dungeon, or in an area that's just extremely dangerous with wandering monsters and such, and you can't get back to a place that you might have made a base of operations. The Rope Trick is your mobile base of operations at night whenever you guys are ready to sleep for the night so people can get their spells back and everything. You can make a Rope Trick, and Rope Tricks are very nice, but be careful of using them in extra planar situations. I ran a play-by-post game set in the Nine Hells, and they found out the hard way what happens when they go up into their Rope Trick.
Doesn't work too well, does it?
Well, they came out. They were in like the second layer of hell, and when they came out of it, they were down in the fourth.
Oops!
Because it bounced them all around. Because it is in itself an extra dimensional pocket, you might say. So it's a wonderful spell, and it's best used, I believe, for when you need to rest and get your spells back, and you're in a very dangerous environment where just setting up a regular camp might not be the best option.
Right. Just to clear up everybody for what Rope Trick, it's a level 2 spell, and the duration. Keep this in mind. It's 2 turns per level, and that's non-combat turns. So that lasts a long time. So at minimum, your magic user who has the potential to gain that spell at the level of third level magic user can get that second level spell. That spell is going to last 6 turns, which would be 6 hours, right? Because a non-combat turn, if I remember correctly, is an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 6 hours. So that's a lot of time where that spell is active, where you're in this extra dimensional space with the party, that they can get some healing, they can get some rest, maybe form a plan of attack for something maybe later on.
Maybe cast Detect Magic or Identify.
That's right. Detect Magic, Identify on items that you have. Like I said, other casters of spells, clerics, druids, magic users, illusionists. I have enough time in that 6 hours to regain a couple of spells. So
Yeah. No, I
So
was
that's
wrong.
why
said first
I
level.
as I look at this spell, it's either one that you want to keep in your repertoire, or if you're lucky, have that on a scroll, and maybe have it on multiple scrolls. Particularly if you know if you're going on a long journey through hostile territory, or in a real heavy-duty dungeon crawl, like I gave the example of Castle Greyhawk. So that's how you would use Rope Trick. And as far as what the extra dimensional space looks like, well, that's up to you, because there's no description.
Yeah.
So you just kind of make it up. So
Yeah,
Rope Trick.
I believe when
Never
we
leave
played
home without it.
It looked like a kind of like like an enchanted glade, except it had like this heavy fog all the way around it, which basically
I
you
always
couldn't go
pictured
into.
it. I always pictured like the Rope Trick, the extra dimensional space was like a study or a library or like a conservatory room or something like that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's how I always kind of pictured it.
Cool.
So, yep.
Do we,
Rope
have another,
Trick.
do we have another email, Chad? Or
Yeah. Okay. We have one here that came from Jeremy Cook. It's kind of a long email. Well, I think I can actually probably read this one. Let's see here. Hello again, RFIers. I'm still enjoying the podcast, though I only play newer editions of RPGs. I really do enjoy where the hobby comes from, and get a great dose of that from the podcast. I've also been GMing and DMing Pathfinder and 5th edition D&D for a bit, but have been running into extremely frustrating situation with an on-again, off-again friend who I've been running through a super dungeon to teach in the system. There have been a lot of times where he attempts to argue and control aspects of the game. Now, I know I've let him have his way at times, which usually consists of loads of healing potions, advice, and some other good equipment. Every time, and this is not an exaggeration, a character is injured or must make a save, there's at least a low-grade tantrum from my 28-year-old friend. It was aggravating, yet I pressed on week after week, hoping it would get better. It finally came into a head this week, though, when he refused to continue after the first description of a location, with him arguing and complaining that it wasn't like Skyrim, nor how he expected it to be, going up to this guy and threatening him for nearly harming him. So I guess somebody almost harmed him, and so he confronted the guy. There was a reason for the difference, and I planned for stories and encounters, even with a lot of, though, after a failed check in which his friend blatantly stated he couldn't fudge the roll since his cousin read the D20 result, he accused me. So somebody else read the result, so he couldn't really fudge it. And then he accused the DM, the poster, of cheating on the dice. I don't need, and I offered to roll it in front of him if he wished. He stated he couldn't handle it if a character died. They had cleared 3 dungeon levels and had no near deaths, mainly due to my softball approach with free advice. Even his wife told him to basically shut the bleep up and roll dice. And his cousin said, "You may as well read a book." Yet my friend continued to blame me for not submitting to his every whim. He made claims I knew were untrue. After all, I had been looking at the stat blocks. I found his attitude and behavior ridiculous, stating this is just a game. I know I've been more than fair, as this is an intention for fun. I'm done jamming him, which is said because I enjoy the module and also showing others the hobby. I know people enjoy my tables, enjoy sitting at my table, as people often ask me to GM and talk about the scenarios I run, but I cannot deal with a player who acts as if their player character, I guess, PC, is an untouchable deity living out a Tolkien-esque epic narrative. Narrative. Do you guys have advice for dealing with a clinically anxious player, or anecdotes of similar experiences? Well, my first bit of advice would be explain to him from the outset that this is not Skyrim, and that if he's going to play, his character may actually die. If he cannot do that, then tell him to go play Skyrim.
Yeah.
Outside of
much.
that, make sure he understands that, the DM is the ultimate arbiter. And again, if he cannot handle that, go and play Skyrim, because what he's doing is affecting the fun of the other players. And here's the thing, as a DM, you can go only so far to catering to one player to keep them happy before you start making all the other players unhappy. So, and you're never going to make that player totally happy to begin with. So why lose all your other players when you're never really going to convince the one player? I say in a situation like that, you have to, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one childlike player. So, yeah, just, lay down the law. Tell them this is the way the game works, and if you don't like it, you don't have to play. I'll understand.
Yeah, I mean, nothing you can really do about it. If it's going to keep doing that, you might as well just not cater to him anymore. Unfortunately, there is if he really wants to, maybe to help him get into the mood, there's a bunch of Skyrim D20 stuff material on the web, which is compatible somewhat with 5th edition or 3rd edition or whatever. So you can take a look at that. Maybe you can add those elements into the game to help him if you have that more Skyrim feel to the game. I don't know. Just my opinion.
And if the other players want that also, I mean, you got to make sure that you're meeting. Yeah.
Nick?
Gee, I don't know where to start on this one. But I, as far as personal experience, I don't think I've ever encountered that, but I've read several instances on the internet from people who had players who thought that their player characters should, their characters should never die, that it's all about their character and what they do, and if anything happens to that character, it's the DM's fault or some of the other players' faults. That's a bunch of bull.
Whoa.
So, it's not. I know it's a bunch of horse hockey.
Oh.
So and I think the computer gaming culture has nurtured that to a certain effect.
Yeah.
That, your character is never truly dead. It's like, you wait a few days and you come back, oh, well, good, my character's healed. Wonderful. That there's no sense of risk and uncertainty with a game like that. Oh, this person sounds like they don't want risk and uncertainty. They want, I'm going to go and blast through this thing, and I am going to be the hero. And that's it. Regardless of what other about a narrative or a story, or about how deadly combat can be, or how simply, finding a trap, and if you don't disarm it right, how deadly that could be. That's the grittiness of the game, and that's what brings a person like me back to it time and time again. Because without that risk, without that feeling of uncertainty of what's around the corner or what might kill you, if that's not there, to me, that's not worth playing, because that means, you are not beating the odds. You're just blasting through with your sword or your fireballs and just racking up experience points. To me, that's not fun. That's boring.
Yeah.
I could get that with any computer game. What I get out of a role-playing game like D&D or any other game is I like the danger
of dying.
The danger that maybe my character is going to die, or maybe my character is going to be knocking on death's door, or there's something bigger and more bad than you out there. And those are the risks that your character is going to take when they go out in the big wide world with a bunch of other characters who are not maybe so certain about how their abilities are going to be too, and you all come together and you're going to go into the castle of the Mad Archmage, and you're like, should we run away from these 12 goblins because we're all first level characters, or should we take them down? That's what brings me back to this game, because it's that risk. If you don't have it, then why it's not worth playing, in my opinion.
Well, if you don't want that risk, you can always play a superhero game where there's a lot of combat, a lot of being able to go and blast it and hardly die.
Hardly.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean it doesn't happen, though.
No, but I tell you how many Marvel games I've played when I haven't had a player die. So.
Well, the player character. I hope you didn't have a player die. That would be tragic.
Yeah. At the end of the day, though, just lay down the law at the beginning of the game and stick to it. Nobody will ever accuse you of anything if you do that. I mean, the player might, but the rest of the people there will generally turn to that person and say, hey, man, he did say you could die. So, if you're not having fun running the game, then, it's a game for you too. If you're not having fun, there you go.
That person's calling you. I hear it.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I'm ignoring it. It's probably, that's not my phone. That would be for work.
All right, cool. So let me go on to the next email that I have. This one comes in from Dad's Angry from the forum, said osrgaming.org.
Ah, yes.
He said, what is the proper player etiquette when a player's character is knocked into negative numbers during combat and he will be out for the rest of the combat excuse me, and possible days within the game? Should the player remain at the table or is it all right to leave? I used to play with a person who would disappear from the table once the character dropped. When their character was brought back to their feet, we would have to go find that player who was usually watching a movie or playing on his Xbox. I always felt it was rude to leave for such an extended period. It would happen so much that certain nights we would just continue without him. What are your thoughts? Nick, you seem like you wanted to say something right away.
I don't know. So, you're saying is a player character died, and they're going to be out for a certain amount of, for a certain duration. They don't know maybe if they're going to be resurrected or reincarnated or wherever, right?
Right.
So that person who's playing that character just said, okay, my character's dead. I'm going to go do this now, guys.
Yeah, basically he'll get up and he'll go play Xbox in the next room, or he'll go watch a movie instead, or whatever.
You know what? In a way, it kind of works because your character's dead, so they don't know what's going on. So when they come back, in a way, if they're playing ignorant of if they really don't know what's been going on, in a way, it kind of works if you think about it.
Yeah, it's also kind of rude too. Also,
it is. Yeah, I mean, I could see maybe taking a break for a little while, but I wouldn't say the whole game session.
I did have a player like this once but he didn't go play Xbox. He just left the room for whatever reason and came back like an hour later. Am I alive yet? And then he would say, "What happened?" So we would say, "Nothing happened. You were dead." And he'd have to figure out what happened when his character came alive, because there'll be a lot of players that'll be like, "Oh, this happened and that happened." So you can't actually do that. So your theory of that kind of works, yeah, it does work in that sense.
Yeah.
Oh, my view on the whole thing is this.
Please.
Dead men don't talk. So we used to say that all the time. And, I had a character die one time, and I started talking to one of the other players about, a possible solution. And the DM looked at me and said, "Hey, you know what?" I said, "What?" He goes, "Dead men don't talk." And I've always remembered that. My view on it is simply this: if a character dies and you're the DM, you should know pretty much what, are they in a situation where it's going to be a long time before this guy gets back into the game, or is there an NPC he can take control of in the meantime? If not, I have no problem if he wants to leave the table, and if he comes back and doesn't know what's going on, well, like Nick said, he actually shouldn't know what's going on. He's been dead. Then when he comes back, this is a great opportunity for the other players to really, get their role play gig going, because now they can, in character, explain to him what has gone on. But as far as I'm concerned, if the player can't do anything, and I know that it's going to be a little bit before I can get him back into the game, I have no issue if he wants to go. And, when I think it's getting close to time for him to come back, or they're getting to an opportunity to do so, that's when I'll just take a break. Say, "All right, guys, let's have a break. Come back, go get something to drink or something." And I'll go grab him. That's when I'll go grab him or have someone else go grab him and explain the situation. He's coming back and that the other players are going to have to, in character, fill him in on what he's been missing.
Okay.
That's how I handle it.
That's fine for death, but negative numbers you shouldn't be leaving the table for.
Well, yeah, and negative numbers, if it's not going to be that long, then no, he should stay at the table.
Right.
Any negative number, you should be still at the table because, you want to see what happens with your character, not just, I'm at -3, see you guys later.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a short term, he should stay at the table. But if it's a long-term issue, then I have no issue.
I've never had a character stay in negative numbers that long that someone needs to go watch a movie or play Xbox.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had that experience either.
Just about everybody in my group, as soon as the person goes in negative, the cleric's running over to help, or someone's stuffing a potion down their throat, or anything, stabilizing them, whatever.
Quick, shove a ham sandwich down her throat.
Yeah. Let her die like
Again,
Moncass.
it's an issue of is how long is the player going to be out of the game? If he's not out of the game for very long, he should stay at the table.
Yeah, if it's a death, I understand. Okay, fine. You want to leave because you have no attention span? Fine, go ahead. If it's negative combat numbers and you leave, that's rude. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I would wait till at least the combat's resolved and then say, okay. And then you have to look at the situation. Like both of you have said, if it looks like that they're in a situation after that and that this character's in negative hit points, that it's probably going to be a long time before some sort of healing, if not healing, but either like a resurrection or raised dead is going to happen, then I would say, okay, you know what? If you want to go and do something, for an hour, go ahead or whatever. Yeah, I think it have to be a case by case basis on this.
Yeah, that's fine. You're dead, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's going to be a while before we get you back to town. Okay, I'm going to go run to the store and grab something to eat. Fine, go.
And yeah, that's cool. Sure. Yeah, I think it has to be case by case on this. Yeah.
All right, cool. Nick, do we have another email that you're going to read, or was Jack?
I believe we have one more, and I'm going to be really careful with this one because there's some Latin in here. My Latin really stinks.
Oh.
So I'm going to cut the greeting.
Okay.
So this person, they have a situation in a campaign that is one of those DM ruling questions the Sage Advice columns were born to address. And if you remember the old Sage Advice back in Dragon magazine. So I like by the way, I love this little letter to the editor because it's a very unique campaign setting. I like it. So the short scenario is I've got a paladin of Horus, Egyptian setting currently in an ancient world campaign, which is kind of cool sounding, paired with a monk from Han, China.
Okay.
They're both trying to shake down a Roman politician who has stolen a relic dedicated to the god of Set. The politician's goal is to hold the relic as leverage to force the rulers of the city of Abydos to expand their grain production so it can be shipped back from Rome to feed the masses of farmers disenfranchised by Rome's overuse of slaves in the farmlands. And oh, by the way, good historical research there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the politician in question was exactly defenseless. In a panic, he used an enchanted ring to reduce the paladin to a height of only 21 inches. After trying to stab the guy with a 3-inch Pugio, which is a dagger, our paladin instead used one of his greatest abilities, which is to shape change into a falcon. And a little side to this, yes, we removed the turning undead power of the paladin, figuring it was inconsistent with the Egyptian character, and gave him once per day shape changing into a raptor bird, as Horus is the falcon-headed god. I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's neat. My question is this.
Mm-hmm.
Given his reduced size, would our shape change paladin turn into a normal-sized bird or a miniature version of the bird? I'm leaning towards ruling that a divinely granted ability trumps the minor magic of an enchanted ring. Ergo, the player has successfully found a workaround to being being shrunk. At least he is at least functioning as a size appropriate to his current form. As he gains maneuverability of size, if he returns to human form, he is still teeny. But I could still see an argument that reduction is reduction regardless of the form he takes. By shape changing, he has now become a raptor bird the size of a butterfly. What are your thoughts? I'll know you'll have something insightful to say. You always do. Volente in pace, which means well in peace. DM Sir Thomas. So, what do you guys think?
I think that the reduction would only apply to the standard form, and the other form would give him the normal size of a bird. That's how I would do it.
Chad?
Well, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Really deep in thought
Remind me again. Well, I was thinking about this, but remind me again now. How did the reduction come into it again? It was a ring?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a ring that the Roman politician had and basically shrunk the paladin.
I'm going with the fact that, okay, it doesn't, whatever form he takes, he's still, the divinely inspired gift is the ability to change form. But the reduction is relative to whatever form he takes. So I would go with a miniature bird. He would just be a small bird now, much smaller, even smaller than he was before. But, I like the idea that, if you wanted to, as a DM, go with a workaround, you could easily say that that divine abilities trump a magic item. So that, you could go that route. There wouldn't be any issue there. It's your game.
So, So in your opinion, Chad, if he became enlarged to, say, 20 feet tall, he would become a really giant bird when he changed over to becoming a bird?
Yeah, I think so. You'd have to look up I'd have to, again, reread the description on shape change, but I believe it has to do with the mass of your primary form.
It sounds like the reverse of the enlarged spell that was done.
Yeah.
That's what sounds like.
Normally I would say that, I don't actually see one as trying to trump the other. One's simply changing form. The other one is changing mass, and the one that changes form has to still abide by the rules of shape change, which includes mass. So I do think that the ring would still be in effect. It's not trying. In other words, there's no contest going on between the two magics.
Cool.
That's my interpretation.
All right.
I think I'm going to go with Chad on this one. I think that... Oh, don't be so
Oh, my
shocked.
God.
Oh, my God, Nick. Does that mean you're not my yes man like everybody says you are?
Yes. No, I think that it was... I don't think it's a contest of magics either. I think it's the matter of the spell, and I think it sounds like it was the reverse of enlarge, which was shrink, and it was cast on the paladin. And even though his power is granted to him from a god, it's not like a huge major ability to transform into a falcon. I think because it's another, he basically substituted one minor ability that was normal for the paladin, like the turning undead, for this shape change. I would say, yeah, he'd be the size of a hummingbird. So if he changed into a falcon, since he had the reduction cast on him, I would have to go with that.
Cool. So there are your opinions, and there are your very insightful answers that we always have.
The answer is blue.
The color of this pen is royal blue. No, anyway. And our final email comes in from Joel, who wants to speak about the issue 151 when we spoke about the Cone of Cold, how it affects items and metals, etc., etc., etc. He said he was with his group and they were fighting a red dragon, excuse me. The red dragon cleverly had pulled a lever and trapped them in the cave with metal bars, closing the cave up so they couldn't escape. So his magic user had a couple spells memorized, and one of them was Fireball. So he blasted the Fireball at the bars and tried to melt them, but the bars held according to his DM. So then the next time he decided he was going to blast it with Ice Storm on the hot metal bars. So his DM, his DM ruled that now the bars became very brittle and then shattered, allowing them to flee, and then he puts in parentheses, and die another day. Good use. Do you think this is a good use of magic cold and science? Right. Great podcast, Joel.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
It's creative.
Yeah. I would
I
think
it's
very
I think it's very creative. I would have allowed it. Absolutely. Extreme heat to extreme cold. Yeah. It's going to go brittle. It's going to shatter. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I think that's a very creative way to get a similar result as to having crystal brittle.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
And that's going to wrap up all the emails that we have.
Aww.
Letters to the Editor 5 is now complete. rfistaff@gmail.com, 570-865-4210 is the hotline. Be sure to head over to osrgaming.org forums. We have revamped it, new look. There's a Facebook like real-time chat, ability to send posts to G+ now, plus tweet posts. There's an area for articles, so you can post up adventures, characters, etc. That's osrgaming.org, our forums, our home. Go there and enjoy. So keep it original, keep it old school. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
The Roll for Initiative podcast is a production of Wild Games Productions in association with D20Radio.com. You can visit us at rfipodcast.com or contact us on our forums at osrgaming.org or even by calling us at 570-865-4210. This podcast is produced for entertainment purposes only. All other uses are prohibited. And remember, if your magic missile spell doesn't automatically hit, you're playing the wrong edition. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative.